G'day poker people, welcome back. After a very short session on a Wednesday night, I definitely needed to grind some more volume in the 1-3 streets if I wanted to get my 50 hours before the end of December. I was actually looking to close it out before the end of Christmas just because I was going to have to take some time off to spend with family during Christmas. So I was right back in the next day on a Thursday afternoon looking to play some 1-3. Had to sit 1-2 first, but after a while we were back in the 1-3 streets where we played these interesting hands. So let's not waste any more time and see what happens. Let's go. So we get back to Derby Lane at about 10 to 3 in the afternoon, end up playing 1-2 for 20 minutes where I do end up losing $8, yet again contributing to the absolutely god-awful 1-2 win rate, but can't worry too much about that because after 20 minutes we're back in the 1-3 streets for 1,000 bangers where we play this first interesting hand. So a tight aggressive under the gun player opens it up to 20 and then they get two callers before the action's on my hijack with ace-king offsuit. Pretty no-brainer 3-bet spot with two cold callers in my opinion. So I go ahead and make it 110 and then the action folds back round to the initial raiser who rips it all in for 1,100. Well, I was not expecting that. Both the cold callers fold and when the action's back on me. Honestly, I would like to ponder and for the vlog make out like this is a tough decision, but honestly, I think it's a really easy fold. A tight aggressive opponent, 4-betting and under the gun is going to have an extremely nutted range. I don't think there's any hands we dominate. Like I don't think they're bluffing with ace-5 suited. I don't think they're doing this with ace-queen. I think maybe the worst hand they're doing it with is ace-king themselves, maybe pocket queens, but I think aces and kings are a lot more likely, and when we're against that range with this hand, we have a pretty easy fold. Unfortunately, I was disciplined in this game because I do end up folding this hand and moving on to the next one. Next hand up starts off with a cutoff straddle, so you'll have to see the game being buffed up a bit, and I'm actually first to act on the button with pocket queens, only playing premiums today on the Lee Bets poker vlog. I go ahead and raise it up to 20, and then I get called by the big blind as well as the loose aggressive straddler in the cutoff. And we're three ways to a flop of 8-4 deuce rainbow. The big blind checks it over the aggressive cutoff, who actually leads out for 15. Now when my opponent leads out, particularly for this smaller size, I just think we have the absolute nuts here. I think the range is mostly going to be a bunch of like pocket pairs weaker than ace 8x that are trying to see where they're at, or any of the million gut shots that are available on this board. So I definitely want to go ahead and raise for value and not let them draw for too cheap. I raise it up to 50 and then something a bit surprising happens. The big blind actually cold calls the 50 and then the cutoff gets out of the way. So it heads up with the big blind to a turn, which is the 6 of clubs. The big blind checks it over to me. Now, I think their range is probably going to include all the sets on this board except for probably pocket sixes. I do not think they're going to 3-bet a set on a board this dry. Having said that though, there are still a bunch of worse hands in their range, worse than my pocket queens that they could have called on the flop with. Essentially any 8x would have seen me raising over a weak lead bet, and I don't think they're going to fold there. And you know, we're playing 1-3. I don't think they're always just going to 3-bet pocket jacks, pocket 10s, pocket 9s, which I think they have all of in their range as well. So when the action's on me, I think we want to put in a pretty chunky bet here for straight value. I go ahead and make it 125. Happy with this sizing. Then the big blind is in the tank, probably a good 60 seconds or so before throwing in that call. So it heads up to a river, which is the 2 of diamonds. This is about as clean as a river as we can get. It's actually great because it makes it a lot less likely my opponent has a full house. That combined with the fact that they just called on the turn instead of check raising, I think we have a pretty green light to bet when they check it over to me. The SPR is less than 1 at this point. So I think we have a pretty clear cut all in spot, hoping to get paid off by pocket jacks, pocket 10s, pocket 9s, or maybe like ace 8, maybe 9-8 if they want to hear a call with an 8. I rip it all in here, and then the big blind just kind of shrugs and throws in a red chip to call. So we love to see that. I show my pocket queens, and then the opponent's hand goes in the muck. So let's go. We do end up stacking an opponent here, and we are running hot after the discipline fold in the first hand. G'day poker people, I'm here today to tell you about my new favourite app that is helping me improve my game day by day, and it is the Fastroll Poker app. Essentially what it is, it's a hand history tracker for live poker players, something akin to Poker Tracker for online poker. But they're bridging the gap and they're making it for live players and following a very user-friendly, intuitive software. You can input the hand histories literally right after you're done playing them in a matter of seconds. It takes me about 15 to 30 seconds after I've played each hand, and they're stored on a database inside the app. And the beautiful thing about that is after the session's over, I can go back and look over the hands I've played and see what I'm doing well
and more commonly where I've punted off a lot of money and thus helping me know what the leaks in my games are and then how I can plug them. So I cannot recommend this app strongly enough if you are a serious poker player who wants to improve your game. I've been offered many sponsorship deals in the past from things I think were a bit shady. This is the first thing I actually wanted to promote because I think it is actually a very good tool which will help you guys actually improve your poker game. So if you want to try it out, use the code LEEBETS when you purchase an annual subscription and you'll get the first month free. If you don't like it after the first month, you're totally fine to cancel without charge. But I really think you guys are going to love this app and can't recommend it strongly enough. It's a massive tool to help your game. So use the code LEEBETS on an annual subscription and you'll get the first month free. For now though, let's fast roll back into the gambling.
This next hand's a really fun one. We're actually playing super short-handed for it. We're down to 4 people left on the table after I stack the other guy, and a few people have gone to have dinner. The game's kind of dying down a bit, but we're trying to keep it alive with 4 people. And the action starts off on an aggressive cutoff who raises it to 20. No straddle or anything, they just open raise to 20. And then I'm on the button with 6-5 of diamonds. Facing an open size this large, I'm just always going to play 3-bet or fold. Maybe there are a few exceptions, but against an aggressive opponent, I'm always going to play 3-bet or fold. My inclination is that they're kind of full of shit just because I think they are playing a little bit tilted. So I want to go ahead and 3-bet here, maximize fold equity against what I think is an opponent playing too wide. So I 3-bet it up to 70 and then it doesn't work because the opponent throws in the call. So we are heads up to a flop of 10-3 deuce rainbow with 1 diamond when the opponent checks it over to me with a gut shot and a backdoor flush draw and like almost 0 showdown value with 6 high. I think this is a pretty ideal bluffing candidate. So I decide to go for it. I go ahead and bet 60, using a larger size as well to really try and represent an overpair to the board, put pressure on my opponent's range, which is going to have a lot of those like pocket through 4s, pocket 9s. Even though if they don't fold here, I don't think they're going to stack off with those hands necessarily. So I put in a big bet, I make it 60, then the cutoff throws in the call. So it still heads up to a turn, which is the 2 of spades. The opponent checks it over to me, and now all of those pocket pairs I listed will become natural folds on this turn, I think. Having said that, opponents do get a little bit stickier when the board pairs, just because they know it's a lot less likely that I have a set on the board. But when I'm trying to represent overpairs to the board, I think that's a little bit less irrelevant. So I decide to keep bluffing here. I go ahead and make it 125. And then the cutoff thinks for a little bit before throwing in the call. So we are heads up to a river, which is the Queen of Hearts. Now, when the opponent checks it over to me, I think we have a really interesting decision whether we want to go for it or not. I think when my opponent calls on the turn, the range is going to be a little bit stronger, and a lot of those pocket pairs, the aforementioned pocket pairs, will have folded on the turn. So if we want to bluff here, we really need to try and put the screws to a 10x hand, maybe pocket jacks as well. And this queen might be a scare card for some of those hands. So if we're going to go for it, we have to bet big here. And you know me, it wouldn't be the LeeBets poker vlog without a little cheeky punt in there. So I go ahead and mix in the overbet bluff. I go ahead and make it 620. Hopefully this is an intelligent punt and not a absolute spew punt. And then my opponent folds pretty quickly, which we're happy to see, but they actually turned their hand face up and they had a 6-5 of spades. So they probably, if I don't know if they thought we were bluffing or not, but they're, yeah, we probably didn't need to go that large to fold them off of 6 high here. So fortunately, after that previous hand, people came back from dinner and the game was now playing 6-handed, so we haven't lost it yet. You'll love to see that. And for this next hand, I'm under the gun with pocket kings. I'd be raising this hand under the gun 6-handed, 9-handed, 24-handed. So I go ahead and make it 10, and maybe I should have used a larger raise size because we get 4 different callers. So we're going 5 ways to a flop of 9-8 for rainbow. When the big blind checks it over to me, I'm going to check every hand in my range out of position to this many people. I just want to get the information of seeing what they do first before I make a decision. So I check it over to a tight aggressive middle position player who bets for 25, and they only get called by another tight aggressive button. So when the action's back on me, I think it's an interesting spot whether we want to check raise or call. It is a bit dicey check raising on this board because I think both of the opponents are going to have all the sets on this board, as well as 9-8 suited at the very least, maybe the offsuit combination. So we do lose to a fair bit, but I just don't want to flat here and then the action goes checking all the way through on the turn and we just let our opponents draw for free and then the hand's even harder to play. So I do decide to check raise it in this spot. Maybe it's a bit thin though. Let me know what you would do in the comments below. But I go ahead and make it 125, and then the middle position player folds and the button calls. So it's definitely a little bit of a worry when they call. They are going to have all the 2 pairs and sets. Having said that, not totally impossible that they have a 9x combination. I think any of the open-ended straight draws will probably call my check raise as well. Pocket 10s, pocket jacks, not totally out of the question. Although this opponent might 3-bet that. I know a lot of opponents won't at 1-3, but this particular one will at least at some frequency 3-bet pocket jacks. So whatever the case, it's a bit dicey going towards a turn, which is the 2 of spades. At least that doesn't put anything out there, and I still want to go ahead and bet to try and get value from those worst overpairs and those 9x that get stubborn, as well as none of the straight draws got in, so as long as we don't absolutely bomb it or anything, I think we can still get called by some of those hands. So I go ahead and make it 175, and then the villain throws in the call again, which is a pretty bad omen judging by the size of the pot. I am definitely worried because I think they're going to slow play all their sets when I take this line and they are calling in position, particularly on a board that's relatively dry. I know there's a bunch of straight draws, but yeah, I think there's a decent chance they're trapping and just letting me bet off with overpairs. When the river is the jack of spades, putting it out backdoor spades, we lose to that as well now, but I do consider betting here just because now jack 10 has a pair and I think that'll probably call at least a small bet anyway. But then I come to my senses and realize it's probably a bit too thin. My opponent has so many pairs of stronger hands that beat me here, and it's not like a total guarantee that they even will call a bet with jack 10 or pocket 10s. So I just check it over to them, looking to assess what they do, and then they don't think too long before going ahead and betting 400, and now I'm very concerned we're behind. All the sets, 9, 8, even pocket jacks, if they didn't 3-bet that pre-flop, they could have this on the river, and now they're trying to bluff us. Backdoor flush draw is totally possible as well, like 9x of spades makes all the sense in the world. So when the action's on me and against a tight aggressive opponent who I think's bluff frequency is going to be pretty low, not totally impossible, they are just going for it with 6-7, but I think more than likely they just have one of the many value hands in their range, and for the second time this session, I decide to make a disciplined laydown with a premium hand. I fold the pocket kings, and looking back on this hand, I am happy with my fold on the river, and I don't think my turn bet and flop check raise were too thin, but it is pretty borderline, so let me know how you would play the hands below. So we stuck around long enough and the game is now playing 8-handed again. You love to see it. The game is not dying here at Derby Lane. Whatever the case, things get even better because there's an under the gun straddle on. Let's go. And the action folds to a tight aggressive low jack who opens for 20. And the action folds to my small blind with 7-6 of spades. Now I'm going to be playing 3-bet or fold out of the small blind. And as you guys can probably tell, if I folded, this hand would not make the vlog. I do go ahead and 3-bet it to 90. Looking back, this is way too loose and a little bit of a spewy play. I think folding is the prudent play. Maybe we're starting to see a lack of discipline. I've definitely been exercising my discipline muscle with the ace king and pocket kings fold, so maybe it's starting to wear out and I'm making a little bit of spewier plays. Whatever the case though, I go ahead and make it 90 and then the low jack calls. So we're heads up to a flop of ace 7 with 1 spade rainbow. When the action's on me, out of position to an opponent who I honestly think has a bunch of ace x combinations in their range, I just want to check it over to them and see what they do, and they do check back. So we get a free turn, which is the 5 of clubs, completing the 4-card rainbow. Now I don't think there's any use in starting to bet. I do think it's less likely my opponent has an ace x when they check back on the flop, but not totally impossible. They could be trying to trap, and even if they do have a pocket pair like pocket jacks or pocket 8s, like I think they'll probably check that on the flop as well most of the time, being worried to have a bigger overpair. So I think betting here will be too thin, so I think the prudent play is to just check it over to them and see what they do, which is what I do. I check, they go ahead and bet 45, and for this price point I think we just have a pretty easy call. I think it's pretty unlikely the opponent is bluffing when they bet this size, but it's not totally out of the realm of possibility, and I don't want to be folding if, you know, there's just a slight chance they are bluffing. So I do throw in the call, proceeding with a lot of caution going forward. Then we heads up to a river, which is the jack of hearts. I check it over to the opponent and they go ahead and bet 150. So yeah, pretty concerned I'm behind here. I think it's very likely with the line they took that they were taking a very trappy stance with like ace queen or ace 10 or something, and then when I call on the turn they're giving me credit for a lot of like pocket kings and pocket queens, and now they're just trying to boost it up to try and get more value from their ace x. Pocket jack's not totally out of the realm of possibilities a hand they have either, pocket 5s as well, so you really do lose to a lot. They are bluffing. They would have had to bet like really small on the turn with a bluff and then go bigger for the bluff on the river, which I just don't think is a very common line at 1-3. So maybe a lacks the discipline to fold this hand pre-flop, but I definitely have it to fold here. I end up folding this hand and moving on to the next one, perhaps 3 streets later than I actually should have. So in spite of some pre-flop spew, I don't think I've been playing well for the most part this session, and this next hand, it might be where things start to come off the rails a bit. So we see an under the gun player who raises it up to 15, then the action folds to my cutoff and I peel Queen 10 of spades. I'm going to be playing 3-bet or fold in this spot when the opponent opens 5x and I'm in the cutoff. I just don't want to flat here and let the button come in for a cheap price and then we have to play the pot out of position. I think it's got to be a 3-bet or fold spot. And you know the hand wouldn't have made the vlog if I folded, so I go ahead and 3-bet to 50, and then what do you know, the button actually cold calls the 50 and the under the gun player folds. So much for getting to play this pot in position with a 3-bet. Whatever the case, we are heads up to a flop of 10-10-9 rainbow. Look at that beautiful flop. We make trips. Now my default play is to check it when I'm out of position in a heads up pot. Having said that though, I think this exact dynamic might be a good spot where it's actually good to go ahead and lead as an exploit. I think my opponent is going to have a bunch of overpairs on this board when they call my 3-bet, and even if they do have a hand like ace king or king queen, I think those hands will call a bet anyway. So I think going ahead and betting out for something like 40 or 50 maybe would be like the best play here for sure. Apparently, I was starting to feel a bit tired and playing a bit of default poker because I do just check, which is my default. If I had this decision back, I definitely think leading is a much higher EV play. Whatever the case though, I was playing autopilot. I checked it over to the villain who went ahead and bet 50. When the action's back on me here, I think it's a pretty interesting spot, whether we want to check raise or just call. If we do check raise, I think we're going to maximize value against my opponents like pocket jacks, pocket queens combinations. But if we do check raise, we do take away their opportunity to continue bluffing across multiple barrels if they do have a hand like king queen or queen jack. So I decide to throw in the call, but really could go either way between check raising and just calling. Whatever the case, we are heads up to a turn, which is the 5 of spades. I check it over to the villain inflow and then they check back really quickly. So when they do check back really quickly, I think either they just have like an ace king give up, or maybe they are trying to play a bit of pot control with pocket jacks or with pocket queens, being concerned they do have a bigger overpair. So when the river is at the 9 of diamonds, I think we want to go ahead and lead with a bet here. I don't think pocket jacks will necessarily always call a check raise, and if my opponent does have ace high, I don't think they're going to bluff, so we definitely need to lead here. And I decide to go with a large sizing just because if my opponent did check back with pocket queens or pocket jacks, I probably wouldn't want to try and bluff them off of those hands. I think they're going to call most of the time. The reason they checked on the turn was to induce a bluff, so we really need to bet something here that looks like I am trying to steal the pot with a big bet. So I go ahead and make it 350, and then the villain says out loud, way too much, as he folds really quickly. So I don't know if he was just saying that to save face, but I would hate to think of the notion that he did have like pocket jacks and or pocket queens and he hero folded because I bet so big. I guess we won't know, but this is the first hand in the vlog where I really think I'm just not playing my best, and the wheels are starting to fall off of the bandwagon a bit. So I'm definitely not happy with how I played that last hand, but the great thing about poker, there's always going to be another hand and a chance to redeem yourself. I'm under the gun with pocket 10s. Let's go, raising it up to 15, get called by a tight aggressive low jack, and then a very tight gentleman goes ahead and 3-bets the hijack to 40. When the action folds back around to me, I think this particular player's 3-bet range is pretty nutted. Like, I think if he had ace king, he will probably just flat pre-flop. He's the type that probably is 3-betting with aces and kings and like maybe not even kings. So when the action's on me, nothing to do here but just call. I think if we 4-betted, it'd be a massive overplay, and we're getting really good odds to hit a set or potentially bluff the opponent off of their pocket aces on scary run out. So like the easiest call in the world here, I call, as does the low jack. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is the beautiful 10-9-4 rainbow. So we make 3 of a kind 10s for the second hand in a row. We're running good at Derby Lane, like we always do, let's be honest. I still though going to check it over to the villain in flow, let them bet off their overpairs or specifically pocket aces. I check it, as does the low jack, and the hijack goes ahead and c-bets 125, still fully convinced that they have pocket aces. I mean, if the 3-bet didn't make it obvious, the bomb on the flop did. So when the action's on me, I definitely want to go ahead and mix in a check raise. We are not going to be able to get all in by the river by playing this hand slow, particularly against a money scared opponent who's going to check back a lot on the turn, being worried that I did hit a set. So it's the most no-brainer check raising in the world. I go ahead and make it 300. If I had this decision back, I think going something like 400 just to lower the SPR even more is a far better play. The opponent might be able to fold pocket aces at a deep SPR, but I don't think they're ever going to bet fold it on this flop. So I just want to go really, really big here to try and shovel in money while my opponent can still call with worse. So yeah, I make it 300, but if I had this decision back, I'd go 400 or even larger, to be honest. But whatever the case, I made it 300, the low jack folds, and then the hijack calls. So we're heads up to a turn, which is the 5 of spades, putting out backdoor spades. The action's on me here. And this is a spot where having a larger SPR really hurts us because I can't really rip it all in. I think the opponent might fold pocket aces if I rip it all in for like a little bit under 1,000 when the pot's only 700. It's just, if I made it like 450 on the flop, the SPR will be less than 1 and we're probably stacking aces a lot more frequently. But in this spot, I just need to keep betting and just try to lower the SPR even more on the river. But, don't bet so big that the opponent might hero fold pocket aces. So I go ahead and bet 320, and then the villain is in the tank. I know they got aces, and I'm just really hoping they don't make the hero fold. And then they lean over and they ask me, run it twice if I go all in. And now this is a pretty awkward spot for me because I'm not sure how to respond to this. In game, I just stayed silent and pretended that I didn't hear it, but looking back, I think that might have been a mistake. I actually think saying something like, no, I insist on running it once, does look a bit weaker. And maybe I could have just said that and tried to, feign some weakness. I think saying something like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do whatever you want does look a bit stronger. So I'm glad I didn't say that. But I don't think saying nothing's the right play. I think saying something like, no, I always run it once would make me look like a lot weaker. And then maybe my opponent will be more likely to call off with their aces. Whatever the case though, they are kind of a money scared opponent. And they do end up folding their hand. I still really think they had aces. They didn't tell us what they had or anything, but I think, I'm just really disappointed I check raised so small on the flop because I think it at least cost us the extra money that they would have called on the flop, and who knows, maybe they would have stacked off at a lower SPR. So whilst I haven't been super impressed with how I played the previous 2 hands, I think this one is where things just go from bad to worse, and you'll see what I mean when we get into it, but a bunch of people have left the game at this point, so we're back to playing 5-handed again, so yet another short-handed one. But at least on a positive note, we do have a button straight along for this hand, which you'll love to see, and then 2 passive players open limp in the blinds, and then the action's on my under the gun, which is kind of like a middle position when you're playing 5-handed. Whatever the case though, I have king 4 of spades. Now I think this is a pretty easy fold. Whilst I do think both of the blinds are probably limping in with trash, they will limp fold a bunch. I do think the button is pretty liable to call us, being that they'll get to play the hand in position. So I really do want to do a tighter range. I think if I had king 9 suited or ace 4 suited, they will be fine ISO raises, but king 4 suited is just way too loose and I should be folding. This is where things start to turn around. I think I start to play really bad. I go ahead and raise it to 40. Really don't like this play. I think it's going to backfire, honestly, the majority of the time. And I made it 40, and then I do get called by the button, which shouldn't have been a surprise at all. And then the small blind does fold, but the big blind calls. So now we're playing this hand in a bloated pot multi-way, which you don't love to see, and we are 3 ways to a flop of Jack 6 with 2 clubs. When the big blind checks it over to me, I think we should just be checking at this point. We shouldn't have raised this hand pre-flop, and if we see bet bluffing to 2 people with a hand like this, we're just doing it way too wide, and we're just going to get absolutely crushed by my opponents who are going to have a lot of pocket pairs, which aren't going to fold on this flop, a bunch of offsuit Jack X, Broadway type stuff that they can easily defend with, a bunch of flush draws as well. So I think this is a pretty clear cut give up with this low equity. I think the lack of discipline is really starting to affect my play. I think I used it all up with the good folds earlier, and now I'm playing a bit spewy because I do see bet for 45. Really hate this play. I think it's way too wide on this board into 2 people. Fortunately though, the button does fold, but we do get called by a big blind, and we are heads up to a turn, which is the 8 of spades. Now when the villain checks it over to me, I do think c-betting on the flop and raising pre-flop were a mistake, but given these dynamics, I don't actually hate barreling here. I think my opponent is going to have a bunch of natural folds if they floated with any ace-x, backdoor clubs on the flop. I think those hands will fold to continue barreled here. And if we use a smaller bet size, I think we can induce raises from all of my opponent's Jack-X combinations. So if they do just flat the smaller bet, it's most likely they have a flush draw or a pocket pair that's pocket 10s or worse, which will probably be able to fold out on the river. So I think betting something like 75 or less here would be the right play. I decide to bet 100. I think this is just too slightly large and the opponent will still continue to trap with some of their Jack X combinations. So yet again, another bad decision, but at least this one is like not as bad in relative to the previous ones. I go ahead and bet 100 and then the big blind throws in the call. So not loving that. I do think at some frequency they'll check raise their pocket jacks when I make it this big. It's just they are going to have some jacks in their range when I choose the larger size on the turn. Whatever the case, we're heads up to a river, which is the 3 of diamonds. The villain checks it over to me. Now I don't think I can be giving up on this river. I think my opponent is going to have a bunch of natural folds with their ace-x of clubs combinations. But the question comes, do we want to bluff target just that stuff, or do we want to go a bit larger to try and fold my opponent off of like an 8x combination, off pocket 10s, off pocket 9s? And after a little bit of tanking, I ultimately decide I think my opponent has too many Jack X combinations that they can defend a larger bluff size with. So I decide to go with the smaller option, specifically bluff targeting ace highs. I go ahead and make it 120. Now I will say I do like this play, but I only like it after making a mistake on every other single straight earlier. And it's like, okay, like I make one good decision after I fucked up the rest of the hand. Like I can't really be giving myself a good grade for this hand overall. Whatever the case though, some salvation, I make a reasonable play on the river. I bluff for 120, and then the big blind doesn't think too long before throwing in the call. So we know we're no good here. I show my king high and then the villain shows pocket 7s. And I am a bit regretful I didn't use a larger bluff size on the river, but honestly, I think the play makes sense when my opponent is going to have some Jack X combinations in their range. We're a bit unlucky to not run into top of range this time because a bigger bluff would have worked. But yeah, it's just, I think the first three, I mean, particularly the first two streets of this hand are just absolutely god-awful, and I definitely deserve to lose a big pot here. So this next hand has a button straddle on. You definitely love to see that. Things have really been getting worse and worse in terms of how I'm playing this session. So I ultimately did resolve that I would leave at the end of this orbit and probably going to play pretty tight before it, just because I think when I do VPIP, I'm not doing it super well until the action folds around to my low jack and I peel pocket aces. Well, I'm going to play tight, but not tight enough to fold this hand pre-flop. I go ahead and raise it up to 25, and then I get called by the hijack and the button straddler. So we're 3 ways to a beautiful flop of ace 10 8 rainbow. We flop a set yet again in this session. Boy, we're running good. Now, I usually do like checking when I'm out of position in a multi-way pot to see what my villains do, but I think this dynamic is a good spot to make an exception. If my opponents do have a 10x or an 8x, they're just not going to blindly stab at those on an ace high board. But if we go ahead and bet, they're definitely not going to fold those hands having position on us. So I definitely think this is a good spot to go ahead and bet, try to get value. I go ahead and make it 30. So let's go. I finally make a good decision. It's been a few hands. I go ahead and make it 30, and then I only get called by the passive button. So we're heads up to a turn, which is the 9 of spades, putting out backdoor spades, also putting in queen jack as a potential straight, but still feeling very confident in the strength of my hand. And I do actually like this turn because it's going to give my opponent a bunch of 2-pair combinations. So I think we definitely want to keep betting here. And honestly, I think we should be using a larger size just because my opponent does have so many worse hands that can now call. I go ahead and bet 60, maybe a little bit too small, maybe something like 100's better sizing. Whatever the case though, we do get calls. We love that we are getting action with our top set here. And then the river is the 10 of spades, not only putting in backdoor spades, but pairing the middle pair on the flop, which I actually think is the most likely hand that my opponent called with on the flop and turn. So when the action's on me, I actually think we have a pretty clear-cut check to induce to our opponent. I think they're going to bet off with all of their 10x, all of their flushes, all of their worst full houses are going to bet. And if my opponent does have the remaining ace in the deck, they probably will check back on this river. But I mean, I don't want to bet to only get value from those hands when I can go ahead and check raise really big to try and get called off by the more nutted parts of their range. So I check it over to them. They go ahead and bet 80. And now when my opponent uses a smaller size here, I really don't think that they have a full house or a flush. I think it's a lot more likely they have a 10x combination. So I can't go ahead and check raise all in or anything because I think it's likely the opponent will hero fold those hands on such a scary board. But we can still go ahead and check raise pretty hefty, expecting to get paid by a 10. So I decide to make it 420 blaze it. It is the favorite meme number here, but I also think it's a reasonable size at a hand like Jack 10 or call. I go ahead and make it 420, and then the button kind of groans in his chair. He looks really uncomfortable, but he does eventually throw in the call. Let's go. We're getting value with our aces full here. I show my hand, and then the villain flashes the 10 of hearts before mucking. So finally, we get dealt pocket aces, flop a set, river a full house, and we're actually able to play the hand well. And I did actually decide to stay for a few more orbits after this, now that I've gained a bit of confidence from finally playing a hand well. But this was the last interesting hand we did play this session, and we decided to rack up and head home. So there you have it. Those were the most interesting hands I played off across this absolute roller coaster of a 7.5 hour session. I was really happy with a lot of my play throughout the session, particularly at the start, particularly with the pocket aces hand at the end. But there's just this absolute gap in the middle where I played awful. I just played the Queen 10 suited, the pocket 10s, and the King 4 suited is an absolute punt spew hand. So I really can't give myself an A grade. I think I would if it wasn't for those three middle hands, but yeah, they just absolutely drag me down. Got to give myself a B grade. It's just frustrating because it could have so obviously been an A grade today. But it's going to hurt my challenge just having these random moments of spew every so often. And I really need to try and cut it out because it's going to hurt our win rate in the long run. Although, in spite of that massive spew in the middle, I still did end up winning 445 in this session, which is going to bring our win rate back up ever slightly. We've increased it by a little less than $1. We are now at $53 an hour at 1.3. So still got a lot of work to do to get back to the $60 an hour, but at least we're getting closer. There is only 16 hours left before I hit 50 hours for the month of December and collect my $500 bonus. And to be frank with you guys, I'm going to stop playing 1-3 at Derby Lane after that is done. My bankroll's up to the point where I can play 2-5 again regularly. So I think I'm going to be more of a 2-5 reg after this point. But we've still got two more sessions in the $60 an hour at 1-3 session. And if I don't hit $60 an hour by the end of that, I lose the challenge. But if I do, I win. So make sure you hit subscribe and you'll get the penultimate and the finale of the $60 an hour at 1-3 challenge, which will be coming out on my channel soon. So make sure you hit subscribe and you'll get those when they come out. Really anxious and excited to show you guys the conclusion of this challenge because it is an absolute sweat not to give anything away. For now though, I'm out of here. Bidet.